What's up, everybody? It's your boy. I'm a school teacher and the school year just ended, and it is now the most glorious time of the year. The time about which the prophecy foretold, the great
frolic throughout which all educators, both of arcane wisdom and those of earthly erudition, escape back to the underground network of ancient tunnels in which they hide for this, the solstice preparation period, engaging in the dark arts of revelry and libation whilst the clock noting the onset of the coming school year marches ever onward.
AKA Reed from Shameless Nerd. Today's video is about the best Disney movie of all time, or more specifically, why a Disney movie you probably don't think of when you think of the best Disney movies of all time is actually the best Disney movie of all time. If you end up liking this video, please consider dropping a like and possibly even subscribing to the channel. You can also join these beautiful people right here and support the channel directly by becoming a member. You can also join the Shameless Nerd Discord community, which is linked in the description, and you can reach out to me directly at readfromshamelessnerd@gmail.com for any questions, comments, concerns, or ancient sacrificial offerings that you may have. All right, let's get into it. I recently made a video, which is my biggest video to date, about a hyper-specific issue I take with a lot of thematic ideas in popular kids movies. I'm not going to go into like details here. You can watch it and come back if you like, but basically, I don't like the Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer trope that being different is great, as long as your difference is of value to the normal people in society, which is not a particularly unique or novel take, but my case in that video is that that specific message is accidentally present in a lot of kids movies, and it's often very subtle, but that once you have that idea in mind, that the main character in a movie is different and acts as the mechanism by which other characters achieve self-actualization, or the society and the universe of the story grows to see how that character's difference can be exploited for their gain, you kind of see it everywhere. And in that video, I got a lot of pushback from people who didn't like that I was coming after some of their favorite films, some of my own favorite films, in truth, and disagreed with me. And we had a lot of fun arguing in the comments. I stand by my inclusion of every movie I listed in that video, and I think that a lot of the disagreement was a little misguided, in truth, arguing that I was claiming these kids' movies intended to have this message, or more often that I was claiming this was the main message and that I missed the point of the movie or whatever. And neither of those is true or what I was saying. My claim is just that a lot of these kids' movies accidentally, subtly, in addition to the primary theme, sometimes while actually trying to teach the exact opposite even, have this as a secondary, unintentional thematic statement. And after that video, I got a lot of questions about movies that did it right, or that were examples of good kids movies that don't have that theme. And I am overjoyed to discuss a certain Disney movie, one that I will not only argue is an example of a movie that doesn't have this theme, but is also a movie unlike any other, is hilarious, is extremely smart and well written, and is my favorite animated movie of all time. And that movie, of course, is Emperor's New Groove. So, first of all, let's do a little synopsis, because you may not remember the details of this movie, which is now 25 years old. It'll be important for ensuring that the rest of this video makes sense, and because it'll be fun. So, in as few words as my verbose, wordy ass is able to put it, Emperor's New Groove kind of goes like this. Cusco is the emperor of the Incans, and he is a huge dick. On his 18th birthday, he decides that what he wants as a present from himself to himself is a new summer home, which he will build on a nearby village he wants to destroy for this purpose. Pacha, the main guy in the village, is like, hey, please don't, like, destroy my town for like a water park and shit. And Cusco's like, no, I think I want to. And then Cusco discovers that his main advisor, Yzma, who's voiced by Eartha Kitt and is one of the greatest characters in cinematic history, in my opinion, is trying to take his throne. So he fires her, and then after Yzma decides to kill Cusco via poison, Kronk, another of the greatest side characters ever written, accidentally gives Cusco the wrong poison. It's actually
the poison for Cusco, the poison chosen specially to kill Cusco's poison,
which turns him into a llama. Then Kronk is sent by Yzma to take Cusco's llama ass out into the woods and kill him, but after some like cartoon shenanigans, he drops the sack in which Cusco is passed out, and then when Cusco wakes up, he's a llama, and he's in Pacha's backyard. Pacha then outsmarts Cusco because Cusco's kind of an idiot, and he convinces Cusco to not destroy the village by promising to help him. Then, on their way back to the palace, Cusco tries to go back on his promise to Pacha. They fight, and then Cusco has a moment of kindness and or guilt and helps Pacha not die. But then Cusco's arrogance and self-importance prevents him from trusting that Pacha is the one that's on his side, and the two cross paths with Yzma and Kronk, to whose side Cusco immediately defects. But then he overhears Yzma and Kronk talking about killing Cusco, and he's finally shattered, and he realizes that Pacha was the good guy all along, and he wants to apologize, but it's too late, and he can't find him, and he's a llama. So independently, he just accepts being a llama, which I think is a really cool and important little tiny point in the subplot. Then he does happen to find Pacha, the two reconcile and agree to work together, and I'm skipping ahead a little bit, yada yada yada, but basically Kronk has an attack of conscience and tries to kill Yzma instead of Cusco. Cusco and Yzma then fight over various potions, and eventually Cusco ends up with a choice to either save himself or save Pacha, and he chooses Pacha. But then, because it's a Disney movie, Cusco ends up getting the potion anyway, Yzma gets turned into a cat, and Kronk gets to be a Boy Scout leader. Cusco becomes human and emperor again, and importantly, he still builds his summer home, but he does so on an uninhabited island, and he and Pacha's apparently subordinate village people, but to a lesser degree here, are benefited, but the status quo otherwise remains pretty much unchanged. Cusco seems to be kinder, more empathetic, he doesn't destroy Pacha's village, and he and Pacha become friends, but Cusco is still the emperor, he's still self-serving, he's still in power, and he still builds his summer home. He has lost nothing. And for the purposes of my interpretation of this movie in the context of how I'm discussing it as it relates to like being different trope, this is actually a good thing and super important. So first, let's talk about why this movie is so cool, thematically, like lesson speaking. So my problem with a lot of these movies is that the setup tends to be, here is this character who's different from everyone in a way that ostracizes them from society. And then they're essentially shunned by the society for that reason, that difference. And then that difference turns out to be the very mechanism by which they earn acceptance back into the community from which they were just ostracized. Additionally, every kid's story is framed as an underdog story because it's largely inoffensive. It lightens the burden on the writers of the story to make an interesting character because you can instead write a character to whom it is easy to be sympathetic, and because it creates an easy framework in which to make the lesson very obvious to children. The character's tangible difference becomes a symbol for whatever the story is trying to teach. Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer is physical handicap. Shrek is insecurity and self-doubt. Wreck-It Ralph is impulsiveness and anger, etc. And when that character wins, that character is either freed from that difference, i.e. Shrek, Cinderella. That difference proves useful, i.e. Rudolph, Wreck-It Ralph, the Emoji Movie, Turning Red, Angry Birds movie, or that difference proves to be insignificant altogether because it's ultimately artificial in the first place, and it is only there to be the mechanism by which the other normal characters learn to be inclusive and reach self-actualization, i.e. Encanto, Luca. In Encanto, for example, the thing that makes Mirabel different is that she isn't different. She's the only one without superpowers, and everyone shits on her for it the whole movie until she proves useful despite not having a superpower, and then everyone's like, yeah, having a superpower isn't actually that important. Thanks for teaching us that. We're good people now. In Emperor's New Groove, the main character is different. He's exceptional, because otherwise why would you tell a story about him, but only in status. And importantly, the moral of the story, or the lesson that the viewer learns at least, which is obviously like you should be kind and empathetic to people, has nothing really to do with that difference. Him being the emperor is a lens through which his personality defects are pretty easily explainable, which I'll talk about in a second, and him being emperor is the mechanism that creates the inciting incident for the conflict, but the only thing remarkable in any way about Cusco is contextual, coincidental, and situational. The theme is expressed through the story and character development of a deeply flawed, complex, and largely unsympathetic protagonist. And guys, that's why the movie is so charming. It's portraying the single most cliche moral, do unto others as you would have them do unto you, or however you want to put it. And it is able to do so without being cliche and predictable and corny because it's subverting the exact trope that I'm talking about. It is the aspect of this film that makes it so fun and different. And then there are a whole bunch of other cool things about this movie that I'll talk about in a second. Cusco is completely normal. In fact, he is surrounded by people that are way more exceptional than he is. But he's also not exceptional by being the only unexceptional character. The characters in this movie are cartoonish and hyperbolic, but they are also complex and realistic and flawed. That's art reflecting humanity in a way that is fun and hilarious and exaggerated and cartoonish, and it's still accessible to kids. Yzma is evil and is literally plotting a murder for personal gain, but we also see her being very relatably insecure and self-conscious. Kronk is lovable and stupid and kind at heart, but he does have the angel and the devil on his shoulder, literally speaking in the film, and he does decide to work for a murderer. Pacha is middle management. He's like the downtrodden figure in the film, but societally speaking, he's the leader of his village. He lives on the hill. He only cares about the oppression and wrongdoing at all when it threatens his home. He's perfectly happy to benefit from the setup of society until then, and he's kind of a petty, angry dick sometimes himself. And then Cusco, of course. He is deeply flawed. He's arrogant, he's rash, he's self-obsessed and vain, he's kind of an idiot sometimes, but he's also simultaneously, in the same way that real human people are, capable of the inverse of all of those traits. He has moments of supreme intelligence, he has moments of empathy and kindness. We see how his vanity is a defense mechanism for his insecurity. He struggles with the weight of pressure to perform. He's like a real guy, and that's why you like him a little bit when you watch the movie. This is a movie about the villain. And so the villain in the film then is the bad guy, but she's also sympathetic, and the side characters can and do have traits on both sides. When the characters are portrayed as human, as sympathetic, as complicated, you end up with a blank canvas upon which you can paint any human emotion, teach any moral lesson, tell any story, and the suspension of disbelief isn't the indulgent, difficult act that it ends up being for, say, the Emoji Movie, because because the characters feel like they are real, and the emotion that follows feels real as a result. Kuzco learns an important lesson about friendship and kindness through some weird shit that happens to him. Then he goes back to being emperor. He tones it down a bit, he makes a friend, the good guy wins, and the bad guy loses, but also the good bad guy wins and the bad good guy loses. And in this complicated presentation of a messy, realistically complex, emotional, and personal landscape, the only thing that is crystal clear is the message. It is more readily apparent in Emperor's New Groove what you're supposed to learn because you don't know who you're rooting for. You don't get distracted by that. All that is clear is the story, which remains in center focus because the characters aren't themselves entirely flattened plot devices. The reason why the lesson of acceptance falls flat in Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer is because you feel really bad for Rudolph. You're mad at the universe in which he lives, wherein his difference is punished until they find a way to exploit it. In fact, you're so mad that you reject the notion that those characters who shun him are even redeemable. All you care about is Rudolph. In Emperor's New Groove, you end up liking Kuzco fine, but no one's favorite character is the protagonist here. Yzma is by far my favorite, and I personally think she's representative of like a French Revolution style overthrowing of an impressive system. In the world of Emperor's New Groove would be better off if she had killed Kuzco, and then Kronk's intrinsic kindness could kind of be like a balancing mechanism for the new Yzma rule, being a more like favorable leadership for the common man. But I'm a weirdo. Most people like Kronk because he say funny things. You're not even like pumped when Kuzco wins. You're just pumped that he learns the lesson, and the movie places that as the ultimate victory, and that's a massive difference. And that in and of itself is a really cool and unique thing for a kid's movie, but that's not the only reason why Emperor's New Groove is so good. First of all, it's hilarious. Like, it is truly funny. Like, Patrick Warburton, who voices Kronk, is one of the greatest voice actors since like Mel Blanc, though far less versatile, obviously. Eartha Kitt is like maybe the single most underrated actor and voice in Hollywood history. David Spade is strangely likable as a character when the character's meant to be unlikable, and John Goodman plays the sympathetic everyman very well. This is a cast of supremely talented, David Spade notwithstanding, kind of actors and comedians, and importantly, they're not cartoon actors. They're not Disney go-to guys, which is another reason why Emperor's New Groove feels so vastly different from similar movies of the era. It's not like adult edgy, like in the way that Shrek masterfully pulls off, or how old SpongeBob used to weave in adult jokes to kind of like satiate adults having to watch it with their kids. It's just real. Like, they're real adults playing real complicated human characters with some adult edge just in tone. And it's able to do both at the same time, which is maybe the most important mark of a great kids film for me, the ability to appeal to both kids and adults, not in turn, but simultaneously. Kronk, Yzma, and Kuzco and Pacha, but especially Kronk and Yzma, are just genius-level comedic characters. It is genuinely like a laugh-out-loud film as an adult viewer. Another thing that makes Emperor's New Groove really cool is all the weird, like, fourth wall-breaking plot stuff, which was pretty new as far as I know of in a Disney movie. This is long before the Deadpool-esque, like, exhausting, repeated fourth wall breaks of some modern, like, Disney stuff. And in Emperor's New Groove, Kuzco completely inexplicably, like, knowing that he's in a movie and doing play-by-play and framing the whole movie as, like, a retrospective flashback is done really well and is really funny and well suited to Kuzco as a character, and it feels very ahead of its time and modern for a movie in 2000, especially a cartoon, and especially a Disney cartoon for theatrical release. But my favorite minor aspect of the movie is something that I have just a specific love for in movies, and that's when writers and directors make a decision that never works, but they're able to make it work in the context of whatever specific film they're making. And Emperor's New Groove is literally the single best example of one of these that I look for often that I can think of, and that's in making the main character unlikable and situationally hard to root for. This is a massive pitfall in a lot of modern kid stuff. This is why, like, modern SpongeBob sucks, for example. SpongeBob is insufferable now because he's just been completely flanderized and now he just cries every episode, the whole episode. Or like Ted in Ted, or Lightning McQueen in Cars, or Anna Kendrick's character in Pitch Perfect, especially Pitch Perfect 3, where the main character is so unlikable, it's like distracting and makes the movie unpalatable as a whole. For some reason, this has just been happening a lot lately in movies, where the main character sucks so bad it ruins the movie. This is often when a movie attempts to make a complicated main character or flip a typical story trope on its head, like Emperor's New Groove does and misses. Like, Despicable Me is another example of a good movie that does this well, or like, in my opinion, the greatest example of this all time is like the main characters of Goodfellas. That's one thing that's hard enough, but the other thing that's even less frequently successful is how Emperor's New Groove's protagonist is situationally very hard to root for in the first place. Like, it's pretty hard to feel bad for anything happening to Kuzco. He's literally the most privileged, powerful person in the universe in which he lives, and yet you kind of do anyway. You don't feel horrible for him, but the fact that he is essentially God and you can sympathize with him being the character to whom the negative thing is happening in the story is, to me, indicative of some pretty masterful writing and storytelling. This is the reason why Superman is so much statistically less popular than the other super famous superheroes. Think about the superheroes who in this like tacky, maximalist, Marvelified world that we all now sadly live in are the most popular by far. Spider-Man, Batman. The single two most human superheroes, the most accessible tragic backstories, the most relatable, human, complicated stories of superhero-ness. Even though Superman has not only the coolest superpowers, but also all of the superpowers, no one gives a shit about Superman because he has all the superpowers. He's the most handsome, he's the strongest, he's the most super. None of that is compelling, and somehow Hollywood executives continue to try to make Superman movies, not realizing that none of them will ever compete with Spider-Man or Iron Man or Batman or even Captain America. There's a new one coming out this year. Superhero fans, as easy to please as they seem to be, will never flock to Superman because Superman is so awesome that he's lame as hell. There is a point of diminishing returns with this sort of thing. So the fact that Emperor's New Groove essentially has Superman as the main character, and then on top of that, they make Superman a pompous dick who patronizes everyone around him and is self-obsessed, and he's still likable and sympathetic, and he's voiced by David Spade, and he's still sympathetic and likable, and it doesn't completely ruin the movie, but actually makes it better. I mean, that's a feat on par with like all-time great movie writing, in my opinion. I just think that's really cool as a decision, and it's truly the only movie I can think of that attempts that way and succeeds. Anyway, that's all I got. It is now time for the impression. Right. Cusco's poison. The poison specifically for Cusco. Cusco's poison. Cusco. That's the best I got. Whatever. Thanks for watching. See y'all next time. In this week's post-video video, I want to keep it light, in keeping with my being a teacher and summer break starting. You guys have no homework this week. Imagine you're a student in school right now. Like, think back to when you were in 7th grade for a minute. Imagine yourself in whatever classroom you think of when you think of yourself in 7th grade. And now pretend that I'm your teacher. All right. Well, guys, that's it. Your homework assignment today is to go home, enjoy your time off, go outside, ride a bicycle, play a single-player video game that isn't online, play in the sprinkler, drink a really cold lemonade. It was a pleasure to be your teacher this year. I'll see you all next year, but thankfully not in this class. I hope you have a great summer, and, well, I'll see you around. But I'll see you guys next week. You get it. Like, I'll see you guys next week of the next video. Love you guys. Have a good one.